Welcome back to Pastor Plek's podcast, recording live from Austin, Texas, and I'm so glad to have an assortment of crew with me this morning, and we always have, as always, Pastor Joseph Aiken III. Welcome, sir.
What's going on, everyone?
And I have now pretty much a regular around here.
Yeah.
I like
Leah
being
Brown.
a special guest more than
Okay, so we'll
a
keep you
regular.
special. Yeah.
Special.
You're no longer regular. You are very special, and we have a long-time listener, first-time talker. We have Jeff Mitchell.
Hello.
And I'm
good.
so
Happy to be
glad that you are on with us today. And thank you for the assortment of questions you've asked over the years.
Yes, sir. Got to give some fodder.
Yeah, we got to give us something to talk about, and
Yeah.
we do appreciate that. This week is it's kind of a heavier week. Today we're recording on Memorial Day, so you might not actually be hearing this on Memorial Day, but we are recording on Memorial Day, and so inevitably that just kind of makes me think about soldiers that I've lost. I got a couple texts this morning from one of my soldiers who went and visited a memorial, and I have to ask him where exactly it was. It was really cool, and he took pictures and sent it to me of all the soldiers that we lost. And so that's poignant and powerful. But I think fresh on everybody's hearts and minds, which was on my heart and mind in the sermon on Sunday, was Uvalde, which I just learned is a proper way to pronounce it, the Uvalde shooting. And when you look at that, and what I talked about Sunday is that whenever you see evil this explicit, there is a tendency for us to doubt God. We either think God is not all powerful or not all good, because if he was all powerful and didn't stop a shooting that he could have stopped, then therefore he must not be all good, or he could be all good but not that powerful to stop an 18-year-old from taking a gun into elementary school and start killing. And so I think that's where we started on Sunday, and then we really talked about the reality that God is all powerful, he is all good, and he wants to love us and serve us. And I think the one issue that I think we ran into is then why. And what I said is that the reason why God gave human beings the ability to choose to reject him and inevitably to hurt one another was because he didn't make robots. And so what happens when you don't make robots to be your people, then you have an opportunity for them to hurt you and then to hurt each other. And I think that gets into what is God's role in intervening and all that. So
Right.
any thoughts before we get into that from the sermon on Sunday and just what we talked about in the book of Mark? Leah, I'm going to just start with you because you're right next to me.
Start with the one who was trying to put a baby to sleep during the whole sermon.
That's
Chewy fingers.
Hey, you did well. You did well with that.
I think it's a tricky question. It's hard. Why does God let bad things happen to people? I think you did a good job answering it, though. I don't have much to add to the philosophical discussion because I think you covered it.
Yeah.
And also, we would be very derailed if we got into
That's very
debates
true.
about
Very
God's
true.
sovereignty.
But I
this.
do want to make sure that we get into just like before we go into Uvalde specifically, just the overall Uvalde. Before we get into that specifically, Pastor Joseph, any thoughts that you had from just the reality of, I don't want to say complete philosophy, although you do have a master's in philosophy, so you are the appropriate person to be asking. Is really how do we account for evil, and then what is God's role to intervene? And then the weird part, I think, is how are we this is where you get on tricky ground. I feel like a Romans 9 moment where you start saying, and now I'm probably answering the question for you, so I'm sorry, but in Romans 9 where Paul writes, will the pot say to the potter, why did you make me like this? And so inevitably, when we start questioning or even sort of asking what God's role should be, we start dictating to God what his role should be. And it's always a dangerous spot. But so with that preface, Pastor Joseph, any thoughts on that as far as, just God's working within evil and all that?
I'm kind of like Leah, where you did answer the question, but God is sovereign, and I have to trust that he knows what he's doing. I mean, it's hard, but God didn't do it.
Right.
Right.
You know, the evil. I think the first part of the question you said, what do we do with this type of evil? Like, how do we handle it? I mean, Jesus is the answer, and I think we were talking even last week, and it's Jesus. What does the world need? They need Jesus, and you can't expect people to react like Jesus would, or what He's called us to do when they don't have Him, when they don't know Jesus, when they have no relationship with God. And so,
Yeah, that's good. Senor Jeff,
Yes.
any further thoughts on all of just? I don't know. I don't want to get into too deep, but I just feel like, is there any other things we're missing here when we talk about? I love what Pastor Joe says, that Jesus handled evil on the cross. Clearly, He did. But why allow evil in the first place?
Well, there has to be evil. Like you had mentioned, we are beings that within our created universe have free will.
Right.
We don't have ultimate free will outside of God's sovereignty, but within our universe and creation we do. And in order to choose to love Him, we have to be able to choose not to. He doesn't want, like you said, a bunch of robots. He doesn't want, like, if there was a girl that some guy at a workplace liked and he was pursuing her, he sent her flowers, she didn't want to have anything to do with him. He kept pursuing her. He'd text her. She told him to stop.
Right.
He shows up at her house and he grabs her and says, I'm going to force you to love me.
Right.
Like, you can't force that woman to love him.
Right.
If he really loved her, he'd let her go.
Right.
And that's what God allows us to do. If we don't want eternity with Him, He doesn't force us
Okay. Yeah.
into it.
There's a nuance there, and I don't want to get. This is where we get into the free will, predestination, the hardness of heart, sin.
Yeah.
But the free will was given to Adam and Eve, and then everyone else inherited sin, and so they
Right.
only had the will to sin, do darkness and evil, and then so therefore, if you don't have Christ, you don't have free will. You actually only have the will to do what you are, which is a sinner. And then Jesus saves you. Now you have the ability to choose. But
Yeah.
that's it.
And like Joseph said, that's why it's so important.
Way too much, and I'm sorry for.
Well,
going
I
down
think that the evil conversation is really pertinent, though. I mean, like,
Yeah.
when I saw a tragedy like this, when I looked at my phone on Tuesday afternoon, my first thought was, this evil is, we had just finished discussing the Buffalo shooting, which is a abhorrent evil, and that he's had a stated motive. That shooter had a stated motive.
Right.
He said, this is why I'm doing this. His motive was white supremacy, and that's
Did this shooter have a
evil.
motive? Do we know?
I don't think we know that.
No, and so I see this headline and I'm like, I mean, this guy killed 19 kids, 2 adults, stormed a school and just started shooting. I mean, there's more to it than that. But that level of evil, I was like, gosh, what on earth could possibly make someone do something so evil? It's incomprehensible. Did
Right.
anyone else feel like that evil was incomprehensible on a just kids? Something about kids.
It made me
maybe.
cry
Maybe it's
when I
because I'm a
heard about it.
mom. You know.
Like, it was,
Yeah, I guess I've dealt with a lot of people that are really messed up, and I can see that line of thinking that just goes, it is their fault. That anger just so wells up that starts as like, I hate, this is why you can't hate your brother in your heart, because eventually you hate your brother in your heart turns into literal murder. So when I meet with people, and usually people that are at a place of real brokenness, they start going this spiral that starts with, what am I supposed to do? I did everything I was supposed to do. And I think there's a part of that in every one of us, like I did everything right. What am I supposed to do? And now, therefore, those people, whoever those people are impeding me. So I need to get back at them. And so I don't know if this shooter was traumatized as an elementary school student, or if he's like, oh, I know that this is a low security school. I can go and create as much terror and pain as I possibly can because I need someone to pay for all the hurt that's been done to me. I don't know where that is, but I think that's where it starts. And not that I can understand that level of depravity, but I see just from, I guess there's my own heart that can go down a dark path, but maybe it's just the limits of society. I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to lose my life or my career, my life. All the common grace things that we see prevents us from going beyond a certain limit.
To me, this seems a step past human depravity. It seems a step beyond that.
So you like there is like a demonic force. Okay, yeah, I'm not opposed to that.
Not saying like demon possessed
there's
guy,
a combination of like evil, demonic, plus the evil of the flesh. Of I am really hurting, and so therefore I want to hurt.
I mean, I think it could probably be said about all mass shootings.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Well, and this guy apparently had, social media posts from 4 years ago saying he was going to do something similar to this in high school.
But he's only 18.
I know.
Wasn't he only 18?
It was 14 when he had posted. Apparently, I don't know. It definitely has a tinge of evil.
Yeah, for sure. And when this is why when you look
demonic.
at when you hurt a child, and again, I think that where did that woundedness come from? At 14, you got to think back to when he was 10, or at some point, who knows? Because for that to develop to that extreme.
Do we know anything about this guy's family life?
I think it's still all up for debate. There's conflicting reports coming out.
Well, the fact that he killed his grandmother, that was just brutal.
Yeah.
I'm just like, man.
Yeah.
Or not, I guess she didn't die. Right?
No, yeah.
Anyway.
She hasn't died yet. Yeah. Thank God. Praise God.
Man. Okay. Go ahead.
I wanted to segue. Yes, I know it's maybe not my job.
No, I was about to segue, so you can segue
on that question of evil. I think that it's becomes, at least in my experience, it was so hard. It's so hard to comprehend how somebody could do something so evil. And so then my mind immediately transitions, rather than trying to process necessarily and kind of cope with that reality, which you did a good job of trying to help everybody process and cope with it in your sermon yesterday. But I think that that's a big reason why we as people have a tendency to go straight to solutions and proposals, because that's a way to cope and process something that's so hard otherwise.
Right, because you feel like, well, because I feel like it's really hard and uncomfortable to sit in your grief and sadness.
Yes.
Without, which is I think what a lot of people say. I don't want to hear about praying. I want to hear about action.
Right.
I don't want to hear about how sad and sorry you are. Thanks for that, but now go do something to make it better. Mm-hmm. And I can understand that that's part of the coping mechanism that person is struggling with. But I think there's a real necessity for people to lament over the fact of great loss. And then, because I feel like the emotion is appropriate, but then when you have like an emotional response to a national disaster, you can then move to doing something as a pendulum swing to make sure that things don't, this will never happen again. And what we know is that we can't prevent all death and evil. But the reality is, man, it feels like something should happen. I think that's the direction in general that people want to go, and I don't fault them for it. Of like, how can we make sure this never ever happens again? Right. I think that's where most people want to go. And as we watch, I think we're at, I don't know how many mass shootings there have been.
22.
In 22?
No, not in 2022. 22 over maybe
the past year?
No, longer than that.
Oh, okay.
What are the metrics they use to classify a shooting as a mass shooting?
Is it 10?
No, it's more. It's 4.
4 or more?
More than 3.
More than 3. Okay.
Huh. Mm-hmm. And that's those who die or those who've been shot?
Die.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, there you go. That's why, man, lots of facts and stats I never thought I'd ever have to care about. But there you go. So in the question that we got on the Buffalo shooting a couple weeks ago was the political discussion is likely to turn to gun bans. Yeah, to gun bans. How should Christians look at the Second Amendment? And so, Jeff, give me your thoughts, because as a Second Amendment person, what do you view? First off, if you can tell us what the Second Amendment is, because I feel like a lot of people hear the word Second Amendment and they don't even realize what they're talking about.
Well, the Second Amendment states, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And it is my belief that, this is talking about the people being able to protect themselves against the government, correct?
Right.
also,
and
we have
enemies, foreign and domestic is essentially what you're
and so I do think we have a biblical command and obligation to self-defense. Exodus 22:2, if a thief is found breaking in and is struck so that he dies, there shall be no blood guilt for him. So this verse authorizes homeowners to defend their dwelling, and if in the process of doing so they kill an intruder, they're not guilty in the eyes of God. Jesus says in Luke 11:21, it's a parable, but he says, when a strong man, fully armed, guards his own place or palace, his goods are safe. So Jesus is using an analogy there, comparing how we should guard ourselves against Satan, but still he wouldn't use an analogy of what we should do if that wasn't a correct and right analogy. So I do believe that it is biblical to be armed and to defend our dwellings and our families. I mean, granted, on every verse that you could use for defense, you're going to find one about grace and forgiveness and gentleness as well. But I do think it is biblical as the Second Amendment stands.
Yeah. What do you think, Leah? Is there another way to view that from a Christian perspective, perhaps?
Joseph, you have any ideas? Pastor Joseph?
Is there another way to view?
Yeah, the Second Amendment. Because I think what Jeff is saying is the purpose of the Second Amendment is protection against tyranny. The founding fathers were just like horrified, terrified that the government might try to do what the British did, which is take away people's rights, and they're going to have troops quarter in people's houses. They're going to say, I'm going to take your whatever. And so to do that, if everyone had a well-regulated militia, then you would really think twice about going and taking a city, because then you'd be forced to reckon with the fact that everybody here is armed. And do we really want to do that? And so that becomes the real question, and then inherently you have the problem of what if the people who have the guns weren't trained on them or use the guns now to shoot each other, and what you had the guns for originally to protect against a tyrannical government, you're now creating tyranny amongst yourselves. I think that's really the argument, because I feel like, from your perspective, self-defense is clearly
it's built in.
It's biblical, but you also have the Jim Elliot defense, which was go in completely unarmed, and if you die, you die, and which is kind of like the way that the Chinese Christians, Iranian Christians, have been living under oppressive governments and tyranny, that they're sort of not looking to fight with.
Can I interrupt you? Jim Elliot, though. Jim Elliot's not trying to come up with a constitution for like an entire country. He's talking about when you go into another person's country, which I would 100% agree with.
Okay, but how about this? Are we, and now let's go down this road. Are we not of another country? Okay, so we're ambassadors. So do we come to the country of which we are ambassadors to with guns and saying, this is how I want to see things roll? I'm just throwing it out there.
So, Chris, are you saying we shouldn't protect our homes?
I'm saying, what did Jesus say? I'm just show me. This is where people get all fired up, right? Because it's going to be like, well, Jesus said if someone strikes you on one cheek, turn them to the other. Okay. Then the reason why, remember when Jesus, and this is where the problem is, when I know the Bible probably a little bit better than most, it gets a little challenging. Here's Jesus with the disciples. Says, hey, make sure you guys get a sword. Why did he ask them to get a sword? So that prophecy could be fulfilled and they'd be numbered with the transgressors. So they look like bad guys. And that's like, okay, all right. Well, then what about Romans 12 in a sense of like, why not rather be wronged? Why not rather have your stuff taken from you? Actually, that's 1 Corinthians 6. But I guess my point is with Romans 12 is the sense of like, don't seek vengeance, let the Lord take vengeance for it. I'm just throwing it out there.
Right.
I want to hear what the pastor
Chris,
has
even
to say.
Before that. So, Chris, what you're telling me is that if someone is attacking your family, you're going to say, Lord, handle it. Because
I'm just saying that.
I know what you're just saying. I'm saying, Chris, if someone came and is trying to fight your wife, you're gonna let them.
Well, of course not. But if you were, if you're a Mennonite, you would. So a Mennonite and Amish totally would. They would.
Okay, so how do you reconcile that though?
This is
Right.
where it's really hard, right? Because I would go.
But you guys are the pastors. So
Yeah,
come on.
I'm a professional pastor. Because then I would say
Tell
1 Timothy
us.
5:8, those who don't provide for their own family are worse than unbelievers. So if you're not providing protection for your own family, you're worse than an unbeliever. Now, what level of protection are we dealing with here? Now, this is why it gets.
Hey.
This is where it's. This is why you.
Hey, you
can
don't have
go-
to play both sides. Pick a side, Chris.
Hey, listen, I'm just.
Pick a side.
So I will say that if someone is coming against my family, I will protect my home.
Sure.
I will not say, hey, God. I mean,
What round of ammunition would you use?
what round of ammunition? It depends on what round of ammunition they have. No.
So you're gonna escalation of force at the whatever they're coming at me with. I'm gonna respond to the same.
Yes, exactly.
You want to fight fair. I don't want to fight fair against someone that's trying to hurt my family. I want to destroy them.
Hey, somebody breaking in my home is one thing. Me being out on the streets is another thing. Me being with just my wife, me being just with my kids.
This is why it's so complicated.
There's a lot of different scenarios where it's like, oh, well, I got to use this force because I have to protect all three of them and have to make sure,
So, and this is why
So I get it.
Yeah.
But I can't sit there and say that I believe God is okay with me allowing somebody to hit my wife or mess with, without me protecting them physically. If somebody
Sure.
is physically assaulting someone in my family, I cannot say with a smile on my face, oh, no, I'm going to just turn the other cheek and just let it happen.
Would that be? It wouldn't be okay for you to do that.
No,
Right.
I don't think so.
At
Like,
all.
Okay.
You
All
just
right,
mentioned
all right,
vengeance.
But so this is where the Mennonites, they would say, because I was with a Mennonite guy once.
Who the heck are the Mennonites?
You guys
Why
don't
do we
know
care?
All right,
They're-
come on.
they're like
Mennonites are
a version
they're
of-
pacifists. They
Yeah.
don't believe in any use of arms ever. That when you're doing that, you're stepping in the place of God, Romans 12, and you are therefore in the way. And so if God wants to stop that guy, then he will.
Okay, why do we care what they think?
Well, because clearly they have a view that's Christian, but this is what I'm saying.
I just want to hear. I want you to pick a side. I don't want you to tell me what the Mennonites
I
think.
want to tell you the reality that the Christian perspective goes all different ways. So it is okay to be.
It's okay to disagree.
It's okay to disagree.
Okay.
It's not sin, for example, to think that that you shouldn't own a gun, and I don't think it's sin for you to believe that you should own a gun.
So what are believing about our neighbors? So let's talk about this. I mean, because I had a friend this week on Instagram say, if you think that people should be owning guns in this country, you don't care about school violence, you don't care about these massacres, and you are not my friend. And I will never call you a friend. She did not say that to me directly. She said that in a story, a proclamation to all of her friends.
Did you unfriend her at that point so you could?
No, I didn't do that. I like to. I don't unfriend people for differing views.
Well, she
I
just
think
said
that's,
she can't be her friend, so therefore, wouldn't you just anyway? Sorry.
She can unfriend me or ban me
All
if
right.
that matters
Yeah,
that much to her. She only has 100 friends, and I'm one of them. But
Well,
she said that.
man, let's
So, and she's a
let's scroll through
Christian.
her
So,
friends.
as a Christian, I mean, that's an extreme example. But
an
it's
extreme
that
example.
that thought process is out there right now because this is such a heated topic.
Right.
It's
So
because
what-
it's an
so
emotional
what
topic.
solution-
So what point? What size weapon are you allowed to carry? Really, this is where it goes. Like, okay, so AR-15, assault rifle. Okay, you can't have that. Then you go, okay, fine. What about a handgun? Well, you can't have that. Well, okay. What about a really big sword? Well,
Are you trying to get into solutions now?
So I think that's what
Yeah.
inevitably people go to the solution mode
Mm-hmm.
because they want to say, what's going to stop? Was it Salvador Torres?
No, don't name him.
Oh, sorry, the guy.
Sorry.
The guy.
I don't like giving them infamy. It's your
Yeah.
podcast, though. You can do what you want.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So sorry. About that.
Let me caveat that I am actually of the belief that I think a lot of these, I think most of these shooters are doing this. A, they have hate in their heart. B, I think there's a demonic force at play. C, I think that they want the infamy because this didn't happen
Even when
100
he's
years
dead,
ago.
I mean, it's like I don't know.
Yes, that's what they know. They're going to die when they go into it. They want their name to live on.
All right, fair
They
enough.
want the media to talk about them. That's why I think this didn't happen 100 years ago. We had guns 100 years ago, and we had powerful guns 100 years ago. But what we didn't have, I mean, not the same as what we have now, but what we didn't have was
rolling with like 10 muskets.
24/7 cable news talking heads that are going to talk about the most emotionally explosive thing that happened in the last 3 to 7 days. That's what we have now. And so many of these guys, they say that that's what they're looking for.
All right, no more naming his name. Got it. All right.
So I was like, okay.
No, I agree. Social media and the constant news cycle it inflames this sort of stuff. I absolutely think it agitates the hate and it just, like you said, it gives them infamy.
Okay, so let's go back to your friend's comment that you can't be her friend because you call yourself a Christian and you will not ban weapons.
Actually, if we want to get specific, I care more about fetus cells than I care about school massacres.
Preach.
That was the accusation, right? After our last podcast.
Oh, right. Yeah, that was the accusation.
So
yeah.
Go back to it.
It's okay. So the question then is, well, what is the question now that I just got?
Is it okay for a Christian? I mean, Christians care about this. We're emotional about it. Understandingly, I think that that's a good thing. I don't think it's wrong to care. I think it's right to care a lot and to want to solve the problem. I agree. But is it okay? Obviously, it's not. But what do we do about the divisiveness?
Well, there's two. There's what do we do about evil. When people drive cars into crowds, when people take weapons or assault rifles into schools. I mean, I feel like the solution that I'm hearing is either A, you build up, like make schools like Fort Knox, or B, or like a prison, or B, you
take all the guns
take all the guns away, which, yeah, I think
so. We're talking about evil number 1 right now. We've got to get back to evil number 2 later, which is my friend's comments.
Okay.
But evil number 1, 2 solutions: take all the guns away or make schools Fort Knox.
Right.
How do you take 400 million guns away?
You don't.
And then all the criminals have guns and the law-abiding citizens don't.
So all the law-abiding citizens turn in their guns because that's who would do it.
In San Francisco.
And San Francisco, except for Nancy. Never. I'm sorry. That was wrong. That was not
Nancy's
good.
Secret Service.
Yeah, they can keep theirs. But what do you? Yeah. So let's say all the guns get turned in. All the AR-15s are now banned, and if you're caught with one, then you go to jail. Now, I would probably say, I bet that would probably stop a couple people from getting guns.
From getting.
I would. So here's what I think. I think that probably would stop 1 or 2 mass shootings, maybe even more, because they couldn't figure out how to get a gun because they didn't know enough illegal people that had guns, or they would just go deeper into a crime. I don't know. Black market and get on the dark web and get what they need.
I mean, we're talking about the depravity of man, which goes real deep. Look at what he.
So is the question of what a Christian is supposed to do? Because we can't take everyone's gun if we're talking about as believers.
No, that's good. But we do have influence in government, right? So if you're looking from a Jeremiah 29 standpoint of looking out for the good of the city, what is a Christian's role in looking out for the good of the city? Is it to vote? Is that the right word? Is it to influence politicians or be a politician that advocates for no guns, more gun laws, less gun laws, all that? I feel like there's got to be some sort of the buzzword would be common sense gun laws, and so I don't want to use that word because that has political ramifications. But there's got to be a way to think about this that allows people to defend themselves against a tyrannical government, which is what was put in there by the Constitution, and then at the same time help prevent people that are mentally unstable and unhealthy and in a supreme sense of darkness who want infamy because of social media or because of just news from doing that. So I think that's where we're stuck. I think this is why nobody has any great solutions, but what ends up happening is everyone starts angrily pointing fingers and saying, you're the problem, when the actual person that did the killing is the one. It's like the person, we just sort of give them a pass because, well, they didn't know any better.
And then we get mad at each other, and we
Right.
take it out on the people that differ with us on our policy preferences.
Right. And I think that's where, as Christians, we're called to be one. And so I think this is what happens when we start defining something as sin that is an open-handed, non-gospel issue. You now become part of the divisive problem, because now you're not working for the unity of John 17. You're now working for your rightness and way of life and all that. So I think that's what's really challenging for me about it. Which I bet you a bunch of people listening to this would probably start screaming on both sides of the aisle, being like, no, don't you understand that if we don't have our guns, then the tyranny of the government is going to take us, take our lives, and we won't be defending our children. Or
Well, they will also say taking the guns isn't going to solve the problem.
and taking the guns isn't going to solve the problem, which might be true, which probably is true. And then on the flip side, you would have people saying like, no, if you don't do something about the mental health of our children, of our families, and that seems like a way harder thing to fix, right? Because like, how can you even solve that? I think that's why people just naturally go to the guns thing, because it feels like an easier solution to just, there's the problem. If they didn't have that gun, then their knife or their bow and arrow or their, sharp instrument would not have done as much damage. So I think inevitably that's where we go. I don't think that would change that guy's heart. And maybe because I think he could have been like the great stabber or something, where he would have killed people, and then he would have
taken a car
and ran it through
a parade of people
or into a school, right? And he's like, I'm going to get those kids. And it kind of reminds me of that Garth Brooks song, where he's the Papa Love Mama. And then
I don't know.
Garth
Brooks.
Garth Brooks classic song. So Papa Love Mama. Anyway, how's that go?
Anyway,
he drives through a motel to kill his wife. Anyway, so I think that's what happens, where you're going to find a different way, and it might be able to limit the from 19 to 3. There's a potential that if you're using a car, you're going to kill less.
So, do you think Christians have an obligation to engage on this conversation in an educated fashion?
Yeah.
Or is it okay for I'll leave the question at that.
Or you're the loaded part of that second half of the question.
Well, I think if we leave the conversation where it is right now, then we're allowing people to just pick a side and say, get rid of all the guns, or don't get rid of all the guns, and then those are the only two options. But I think that and I don't want to do that. Does that make sense?
Sure,
because
but
I think that's feeding into two solutions that don't actually work.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I would argue that Christians have an obligation to kind of learn some of the facts so that they can engage peacefully in an educated fashion on the discussions around guns that are inevitably going to pop up every single time. Unfortunately,
but
these mass
it's way
shootings
too much
continue
work
to happen.
to do reading.
Well, you can talk about it for them.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Because I do think there is something about the sense of I don't want criminals or crazy people to have guns. I don't. At the same time, I think there is a real potential that other depraved people that just have the label government on their sleeve or shoulder could ultimately do something tyrannical as well. And so I think there that goes both ways. But at the same point, this is where I'm like, I know this is the part where I'm speaking out both sides of my mouth, because I think that's why it's really difficult, is that Christ calls us to take on persecution. And so now that's why y'all said don't have kids, because you can do way more ministry without a wife and having to protect them, right? So at the same point, I'm already beyond that. So I've got children, I've got a wife. I don't want them to be hurt, wounded, killed, or anything, but I still want to live for Jesus.
Yeah. Well, you had mentioned you don't want every crazy person to have a gun. There are laws on the books in every one of the 50 states and the federal government. They go by various names. The involuntary commitment laws, the Baker Act in Florida, the 5150 code in California. I think it's just involuntary commitment in Texas is what I looked up this morning.
But apparently this guy, who probably was crazy, wasn't involuntarily committed.
No,
It's
and that's
actually
the point.
a federal involuntary commitment law.
And so, like, if the laws are in place and people aren't using them, what are more laws going to do to help fix the problem if people don't take advantage of the laws?
Right. I think that's where we struggle, right? I feel like that's why we don't have a solution, and that's why stuff keeps happening.
We
Well,
do. It's
people think-
Jesus.
Tell us more about that.
I mean, that's what discipleship is. It's not a solution that's going to happen overnight, but that's why we have to love our neighbors. That's why we disciple, make other disciples. That's why we raise families and we train in the ways of Christ. I mean, the more people we reach, the less often this is going to happen. And that's not like a flick of a switch. So there are things that we have to do, or that we can do in the meantime. It's just, what are those things?
I was listening to a popular female podcast. It's two women. One claims to be a Christian. One doesn't.
I love your claim.
One claims to be, one claims to be a conservative. One claims to be a liberal.
Okay.
And I was listening to them this week just to see what they had to say. Same reason I don't unfollow my friends that disagree with me.
That's nice.
And they said, you can't love the shooter out of somebody. So I wish churches would stop saying just disciple more, just share the gospel more. You can't love the maniac out of somebody.
Sure you can.
Yeah.
Isn't that the whole point?
You love the drug dealer out of me,
Oh, look at
a
that.
drug user.
Meth addict.
Yeah, meth addict.
Is the statute of limitations up on this? Are we sure we should be talking about it?
Yeah, this is going worldwide. If the cops
Worldwide.
show up, then we don't have to tell them if you have guns in the house. Anyway, let's keep moving. So yeah, what do we? I feel like this is where I struggle personally. Is I hear you. I don't want to be like wishy-washy on it, but I don't have a great solution. If we're up, one thing that a friend of mine said recently was that when everybody's armed, it makes a polite society until someone starts shooting. I feel like that's the reality of like when there's other people that have weapons in general. Maybe that's why shooters choose schools, because they're unarmed. I don't know. This is where it's challenging.
I think, why can't we? I mean, we've spent trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars over the last couple of years. Why can't we better protect our schools? Why can't we have
because you don't want
proper trained security with one entrance, multiple exits, guarded entry? I mean, this guy came in through apparently a unlocked door.
A propped open back door. Yeah.
Propped open.
That's That's actually happened a couple times.
That's happened in Vegas, the Vegas shooting.
Yeah.
Well, teachers, I mean, I was in education. You prop the door open, just
Yeah.
saves you time, and you're not thinking, "Oh, this would be the time." That no one's thinking that.
No one's ever thinking that. I probably would have done it too.
Well, everybody would do it because you're like, it's so annoying.
This is what I do every day. Why would I want to walk all the way around? But
so even, I guess my point, even if you had it perfectly fortified, you're still gonna have people that don't. I mean, because out of however 100 million schools, I don't know how many schools we have, but a lot of schools in the country.
Not 100 million.
50 million, 20 million, a lot of millions. Many millions of schools. No. How many schools are there? Someone give me.
It's not going to be in the millions.
Say your thought, though, Chris.
All right. So all the millions of schools,
look it up.
thousands of schools.
We'll go with that.
There were 99% of those. Nobody went in to shoot. How many we got?
98,755
That's it.
millions.
Okay, I found another
Come on.
I mean,
thing that says 130,000, so a little higher.
Yeah.
But that's public and private.
Okay.
Okay, this is
All right. Homeschools. Those count.
They're very well protected.
All right, sorry. All right, I was
Very
a little.
well
Thank you for
protected.
my fact check. All right, so I went Donald Trump on everybody there.
50 billion.
100 million. No, okay. There's only like 350 million Americans, right? So everybody's in school. All right, so that's the
Back to
different
the
school.
point.
All right,
Sorry.
I guess my point is that out of the 130,000 schools that there are, 129,995 didn't have anyone walking to shoot. So you're gonna probably go your entire life most likely without having a shooter. And so what happens? That breeds complacency. I guess that's where I was going with that.
Well, it's a human condition to think, even you see the news like this and you think, well, that would never happen to
Right.
us. Unless you have experienced some sort of trauma, and then it's the exact opposite. It's like, well, that could happen to us at any second.
Right. And to be fair, like I preach every Sunday, and we are in Austin, Texas, and we say a whole bunch of controversial things, and I have not really thought at all about anybody walking in and being like.
You haven't thought about that?
I've thought about it in the sense of like I want to make sure that
Have
we
you, Joseph?
set up like.
Oh, 100%.
I don't. I'm just like nah.
Yeah. No, I don't think about it every Sunday, of course. But
I don't. Here's what I think about. Like, do I want to make sure that our children are safe and children's ministry is sort of like has a plan? Yeah, but I don't ever go up on stage thinking someone's gonna shoot me. I just zero.
I walk into church every week thinking somebody could come in and shoot us, and I do not want to be a sitting duck.
That is why
I've never
you're at
thought
our
that.
church to protect me.
No,
Thank
don't
you.
say that out loud.
Leah the
I think
protector.
about it all the time.
Yeah, well, maybe that's because.
and I'm not a paranoid person.
Well, maybe that's because there's a lot of people that are carrying, and that I know that, and I'm just like, I don't know.
You just, yeah, maybe that's why.
I don't know. Maybe I don't know.
Have you ever, you've pulled a gun in self-defense?
Of course.
Joseph?
No,
Ever
I don't
used
have
a
a
gun
I've
gun.
also
self-
pulled a
or
gun in offense,
ever
which is
brandished a gun? Is that the right word?
I've gone hunting, but I don't.
brandished a gun. I like
in
that.
self-defense?
Yeah.
No, I don't own any.
Not even as a former drug dealer.
No, I mean user.
He said that.
Yeah, I said dealer. I used to sell pot in Washington, but that was a long
Okay,
time
let's-
ago.
Well, that
So,
counts.
still
as a dealer.
counts. Yeah,
The more details you give,
the worse it's looking. Yeah.
careful.
Oh my gosh.
No, Jesus washed me clean. So
Did the court?
no, it was a bout of confession and repentance and prayer, and He cured me of it.
I'm just teasing you.
Yeah.
Praise God for that.
Yeah,
So no, you don't own any guns, and you've never brandished one.
I know. I've gone hunting before, and I've gone shooting. I just don't. We don't own any.
Okay.
Yeah.
You don't
That's not by my choice or Liz's choice. Right now, it's just
Cost.
cost. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah. Okay. So,
Look, keep going.
yeah, I guess I kind of want to somehow figure out how to land the plane on this, and I'm not
Yeah.
really sure how we can land it without leaving everybody in like the same place where they were before.
You can say
Because you haven't
not
picked
two
a side.
sides.
Okay.
You can't say, take the guns, keep the guns, put more laws up
Right.
around the guns. I mean, we've tried it.
I think
So,
we've tried everything.
Yes. Well, in that, and like you said, can you love the shooter out of someone? Jesus, I believe, can.
Yeah.
For sure, he can. I
Mhm.
mean, what's the point of following him if he couldn't?
Right.
Right.
So yeah, and I think this gets me back to a long time ago when we did our politics and Jesus series. It's like at some point it's good for you to work for the good of the city, but you want to work for the unity of the faith as well. And I think maybe that's probably the better place to land. I think a proper grieving period of sadness and sorrow and really kind of taking in loss, I think that's appropriate. But then eventually you are going to want to take action. And I think taking action is appropriate. I think looking for the good of the city is appropriate, but do it in love and not in a sense of you are the devil. And I think that's how we approach politics.
I don't think we can ever love the shooter out of somebody if we can't even love our neighbors that disagree with us.
Our fellow Christians. Amen.
Wow,
There you
Leah
go.
Brown. That was some good plane landing. All right. Hey, listen, if you want to join the conversation, go to pastorplek.com or text us at 737-231-0605. We would love to hear from you. It could be on this subject or any of the myriad of subjects that we cover, as we're really trying to process life and with you, because we want to talk faith, culture, and everything in between. So from us to you, have an awesome week of worship.